There are certain words that reveal everything about a man, not his strength, not his wisdom, but his weakness. They slip out in small moments, when he fails, when he's tired, when life doesn't go his way. Words that sound harmless, yet they slowly destroy his discipline, his peace, and his sense of control. A Stoic once said that your words are the mirror of your mind, and the truth is, most men never learn to master that mirror. We live in a world where people speak faster than they think. Every complaint, every excuse, every outburst is a public confession of the chaos within. The more we speak without awareness, the further we drift from our inner calm. Seneca warned us, "Better to be silent and be thought a fool, than to speak and remove all doubt." He understood that words are not just sounds, they are choices. Each word you speak is a decision about who you are becoming. When you say, "I can't," you are training your mind to surrender before even trying. When you say, "It's not my fault," you are teaching yourself to give away your power. And when you say, "What's the point?" you are quietly building a cage inside your own mind. The Stoics knew that what you say, you eventually believe, and what you believe, you become. So in this reflection, we will explore 7 phrases, 7 ordinary expressions that silently weaken a man from within. But we won't just discuss what not to say. We'll understand why these words matter, and what a Stoic would choose to say instead. Because every phrase you remove, every word you choose with intention, becomes a small act of freedom. Freedom from weakness, freedom from self-pity, freedom from the noise of the world. If you have ever wondered why you feel stuck, why the same frustrations seem to return again and again, perhaps it's not the world that's holding you back. Perhaps it's the language you use to describe it. Welcome, my friend, to True Stoic Way. This is not just a channel, it is a space for men who are done making excuses, men who are ready to speak with strength, act with calm, and live with intention. If you find wisdom here, if something inside you begins to awaken, remember to subscribe. Because this journey, this rebuilding of the inner fortress, is one we walk together. Now let's begin. 7 phrases you should never say, and what the Stoics teach us to say instead. There is a quiet kind of defeat that hides behind the words "I can't." Most men say it without noticing how heavy those words truly are. They sound small, almost innocent, but every time you say them, you are giving your mind a command to surrender. You are telling yourself that the mountain is too high, the pain too strong, the challenge too much for you to bear. And with each repetition, you make weakness a habit. Epictetus once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The moment you say "I can't," you reject that power. You are no longer fighting the obstacle, you are fighting yourself. Because the real battle is not between you and the world, it is between your mind and your own excuses. Think about it. No one is born knowing how to lead, to endure, or to stay calm in chaos. Every great man you've ever admired once stood at the edge of something he didn't know how to do. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up with wisdom, he earned it through reflection and restraint. Seneca wasn't born disciplined, he forged it through pain and practice. They didn't say "I can't," they said, "I will learn." That small shift changes everything. When you say "I can't," you close the door on possibility. But when you say "I will learn," you open your mind to growth, to patience, to the discipline that Stoicism is built upon. It's not about pretending that everything is easy. It's about accepting that you are capable of learning what must be learned. You don't have to know how, you just have to be willing to try. The Stoics believed that the mind shapes reality. If you allow the words "I can't" to take root, your mind will create walls where there were none. But if you replace them with words of intention, you will begin to see paths instead of barriers. Every skill, every habit, every piece of strength begins with a choice to keep going, even when you don't yet know how. So the next time your mind whispers "I can't," pause. Feel the weight of that phrase before you let it leave your lips. Then speak like a Stoic. Replace defeat with direction. Say, "I will learn," "I will find a way," or simply, "I will try again." You will be amazed by how quickly your energy shifts, how your focus returns, and how your will begins to rebuild itself. No man who walks the Stoic path escapes difficulty, but he learns to see each difficulty as a teacher, not a wall. As Epictetus taught, difficulties show what men are. So let them show your strength. Let them reveal the quiet power that comes from refusing to surrender to words of weakness. If you find strength in these Stoic truths, subscribe and grow with us. Because every time you choose a stronger phrase, you become a stronger man. And every time you silence "I can't," you take one more step toward the man you are meant to become. But there's another phrase, one that hides behind pride and fear. It doesn't sound weak, it sounds defensive, yet it quietly poisons the soul in the same way. It's the phrase men use when they run from responsibility, when they trade growth for comfort. It begins with 4 words. It's not my fault. There is a moment in every man's life when things go wrong, and the easiest thing to say is, "It's not my fault." Those 4 words feel like a shield. They protect your ego for a moment, make you feel lighter, as if the weight of responsibility can be thrown on someone else. But in truth, every time you say it, you are not protecting yourself. You are giving away your power. You are telling the world that you have no control, that you are only a victim of what happens to you. And that is the most unstoic thing a man can believe. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have the power to live free if you learn to take full ownership." He understood that freedom and responsibility are not opposites. They are the same thing. The more you take responsibility for your life, your thoughts, your choices, the freer you become. The less you blame others, the stronger your mind grows. Responsibility equals freedom. Imagine a man who blames everyone around him. His boss for not seeing his worth, his partner for not understanding him, the world for not giving him a fair chance. To him, every problem has a name, every mistake has a face. But what he doesn't see is that with every accusation, he builds invisible chains. Chains that keep him dependent on others for peace, on luck for progress, on circumstance for meaning. A Stoic would never accept that kind of bondage. He would look inward first. He would ask, what part of this can I control? What lesson is hidden in this difficulty? He knows that responsibility is not punishment, it is power. Because when you own your actions, your failures, and your emotions, you gain the ability to change them. Blaming others is easy. It requires no courage, no introspection, no humility. Taking responsibility, on the other hand, is an act of quiet strength. It demands that you face the truth of who you are without excuses. It asks you to stop running from the reflection in the mirror. That is why Stoicism is not a philosophy for the comfortable. It is for those who would rather grow than be right. Marcus taught himself to thank the gods even for obstacles. He saw every challenge as a reminder that he was responsible for his own reaction. "You have power over your mind," he said, "and that is enough." When you live this way, the words, "It's not my fault," lose their meaning. Because even when the fault is not yours, the response always is. You may not control what happens, but you always control what you do next. So the next time you're tempted to say, "It's not my fault," stop, breathe. Ask yourself what a Stoic would do. Would he waste his energy blaming the world, or would he use that energy to become stronger? Say instead, "It is my responsibility to respond with wisdom." And in that moment you will feel something shift. You will no longer be a victim of life, but the author of it. Because responsibility equals freedom. The more you accept, the freer you become. And that, my friend, is where true peace begins. When a man finally stops saying, "It's not my fault," he begins to take back control of his life. But just when he starts to stand taller, another quiet trap waits for him. It sounds like honesty, even justice. Yet it's another form of surrender. It begins with the words, "That's unfair." Life will not always treat you gently. You can work hard, stay honest, and still face disappointment. You can love deeply and still be betrayed. You can plan every step and still lose what you built. And when those moments come, it's tempting to look up and cry, "That's unfair." But the truth is, life isn't fair. It never was. It's not cruel either. It's simply indifferent. The Stoics understood this long before us. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When we decide that something is unfair, we double our suffering. Once from the event itself, and again from the story we tell about it. We turn pain into injustice. loss into bitterness, and chance into resentment. But a Stoic man sees reality for what it is, neutral, unmoved, and outside of his control. To complain about unfairness is to hand your power back to the world. It's like walking into battle, removing your own armor, and then blaming the enemy for striking you down. The moment you say, "That's unfair," you are not defending yourself, you are disarming yourself. Because fairness is not something the universe owes you. It's something you create within yourself through strength, patience, and discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the world is change, and life is opinion. The event is not unfair by nature. It only becomes unfair when your judgment labels it so. The man who loses his temper at injustice is the man who has forgotten that the world is not built around his expectations. But the man who accepts reality as it is, gains the ability to move through it without being broken by it. Think about the soldier who accepts the storm instead of cursing it. The athlete who accepts pain as part of training. The father who accepts hardship as the cost of love. None of them waste energy calling life unfair. They simply act. They adapt. They endure. That is Stoic strength, not to resist reality, but to stand firm inside it. When Seneca said that we suffer more in imagination, he meant that our resistance to what is hurts more than what actually happens. The mind creates storms larger than any event could ever justify, but the Stoic learns to quiet the imagination, to see clearly, to accept fully. And in acceptance, he finds peace. So the next time you feel the urge to say, "That's unfair," pause. Look at the situation without judgment. Ask yourself, is this really unfair? Or is it simply life being life? Remember, the universe doesn't play favorites. It doesn't punish or reward. It simply moves. What you choose to do within that movement, that's where your power lies. Acceptance is not weakness. It's clarity. It's the strength to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. The man who accepts gains control. The man who complains loses it. That is why the Stoics taught that acceptance is strength. Because the moment you stop demanding fairness, you begin to create freedom. When a man finally learns to stop complaining about what's unfair, something changes in him. He no longer argues with life. He starts to walk with it. But even then, the battle isn't over. Because the enemy doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes, it comes from within. From a whisper in the mind that says, "I'm too tired." Fatigue is real. The body grows weary, the mind gets heavy, and the spirit sometimes feels drained. But the Stoics knew that tiredness is not the problem. Surrender is. Saying, "I'm too tired" may sound harmless, even honest, but often it is a quiet form of giving up before the work is done. Epictetus reminded his students, "Difficulties show what men are." He believed that exhaustion reveals character, the same way fire reveals the purity of gold. When life becomes hard, and you feel the weight pressing down on you, that's not the moment to retreat. That's the moment you discover what you are made of. The Stoics practiced what they called voluntary discomfort. They would train their bodies to endure hunger, cold, and physical strain, not because they enjoyed pain, but because they wanted to free themselves from the fear of it. They knew that comfort can become a silent prison. When you chase ease, you grow weaker. When you embrace discomfort, you grow stronger. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who led during wars, plagues, and betrayal, yet still woke before dawn to write his reflections on discipline and virtue. Imagine how many mornings he must have whispered to himself, "I'm too tired." But he rose anyway, not because he felt like it, but because duty came before desire. The Stoic man understands that the body will complain, but the will must command. When you say, "I'm too tired," you are allowing the body to rule the mind, but the mind was meant to lead. The Stoic flips the order. He listens to the body with compassion, but he answers with direction. He says, "You are tired, yes, but you will still move." That single choice separates the average man from the disciplined one. There is a deep freedom in doing what must be done, even when you don't feel like it. Every time you rise when you would rather rest, you remind yourself that your will is stronger than your fatigue. Every repetition, every act of consistency, becomes a stone in the fortress of your character. When the world tells you to slow down and your mind agrees, pause for a moment and ask yourself, Is this true fatigue, or is it resistance? Because often what we call tiredness is not physical exhaustion, but spiritual avoidance. It's the mind's way of protecting you from discomfort. But comfort is not the Stoic goal. Mastery is. Epictetus said that difficulties show what men are. So let the difficulty of discipline show you your strength. When your mind whispers, "I'm too tired," answer it quietly but firmly, "I am capable of more." Because each time you choose discipline over comfort, you build your inner fortress brick by brick, choice by choice. Every time you rise again, even when the body protests, you prove to yourself that you are not ruled by feelings. You are guided by purpose. That is the path of a Stoic. And if you walk it with us, remember this truth. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you build your inner fortress. Join us, the true Stoic way. When a man learns to push through fatigue, to keep moving even when his body resists, he begins to touch real discipline. But there is another kind of exhaustion, one that no amount of sleep can fix. It's the tiredness of the soul, the voice that no longer says "I'm too tired," but whispers something darker. What's the point? That question is quiet, but dangerous. It creeps in when progress feels invisible, when effort seems wasted, when the fire that once drove you has turned to smoke. Many men face it alone, late at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if any of this truly matters. The Stoics knew that this question doesn't come from truth, it comes from confusion. Because the feeling of meaninglessness is not a sign that life has lost its purpose, but that the mind has lost its clarity. Marcus Aurelius warned us, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop searching for reasons and start creating them. The Stoic doesn't wait for purpose to reveal itself. He chooses it. Purpose is not something you find out there in the world. It is something you decide right here within your own heart. I once heard a story about a man who lost everything: his business, his marriage, his sense of direction. For months he woke up without motivation, asking himself the same question: what's the point? One day he sat in silence long enough to hear a different answer. It wasn't loud or grand. It simply said, "The point is to become someone stronger than the pain." From that moment, he stopped looking for purpose in results and began finding it in his actions. Every day he built himself again, small, simple, consistent steps. He didn't need the world to give him meaning. He gave meaning to the world through how he lived. The Stoics believed that chaos in the mind creates the illusion of emptiness. When your thoughts are scattered, when your desires pull you in every direction, life begins to feel pointless. But once you return to stillness, to discipline, to gratitude, meaning naturally reappears. It was never gone, it was only buried under noise. Seneca once wrote that life is long if you know how to use it. When you ask what's the point, you are standing at the edge of life and refusing to step in. But when you act with intention, even in the smallest way, you rediscover that every breath has a purpose. You don't need a grand mission to live with meaning. Sometimes the point is simply to face the day with courage, to speak truth when it's easier to stay silent, to remain calm when others panic. Ask yourself, what if the point is not to win but to grow? What if every challenge, every loss, every act of discipline is sculpting you into the man you are meant to become? When you look at life this way, meaning is no longer something you chase, it becomes something you embody. Marcus said, "Be one. Don't wait to feel inspired. Act like the man you wish to be, and the feeling will follow." Purpose is chosen, not found. It is born each time you do what is right, even when no one is watching. It grows stronger every time you rise, even when you don't see results. So when the question returns, what's the point? Answer it not with words but with action. The point is to live with virtue, to train your mind, to become unshakable. Because the man who acts with purpose never asks for meaning. The meaning is already within him. There are nights when the mind doesn't scream, but whispers. The noise of the world fades, and all that's left is a quiet promise to yourself. I'll start tomorrow. It feels gentle, harmless, almost reasonable. But that whisper is the softest voice of defeat. I'll do it later. Few words have stolen more time from men than these. They sound like patience, but they are poison disguised as calm. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right moment, the right mood, the right alignment of circumstances. Yet the truth is simple. There is no right moment. There is only this one. Seneca wrote, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." The Stoics understood that procrastination is not a problem of time, but of clarity. When you delay what must be done, it isn't because you don't have the hours. It's because you've forgotten how precious they are. You act as if life is endless, as if you can waste a day and buy another tomorrow. But time is not your servant, it is your master. Every hour that passes belongs to death, not you. The Stoics lived with a phrase in their hearts, memento mori, remember you will die. Not as a morbid thought, but as a reminder to live fully now. They would say it while eating, while walking, while working, not to create fear but to sharpen focus. Because nothing brings urgency like the truth that time is finite. Procrastination is the comfort of the untested. It gives you the illusion of safety by letting you dream without acting. But every time you say, "I'll do it later," you push your potential a little further away, and your courage grows weaker. A man who delays today will find excuses tomorrow. A Stoic, however, acts even when he doesn't feel ready. He knows that readiness is built through doing, not waiting. Think of how many lives are spent in waiting. Waiting for motivation, for luck, for confidence. But waiting never builds anything. Action does. The Stoic way is not about rushing. It's about refusing to waste what you cannot replace. Seneca called time the most valuable thing we possess, and yet the thing we guard the least. So when your mind says, "I'll do it later," remind yourself, this moment will never return. The sun that sets today will never rise again in the same way. The breath you take now cannot be repeated. There is no later. There is only now, and what you choose to do with it. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is the act of showing up to your duty without waiting for the right feeling. A Stoic does not ask, "Do I feel ready?" He asks, "Is this right?" And if the answer is yes, he acts, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, but now. So stop negotiating with time. You don't own it, you borrow it. Live like a man who understands that truth. Write the words you've delayed. Make the call you've avoided. Speak the truth you've been holding back. Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to move. Seneca was right. While we are postponing, life speeds by. Every day you delay is a day that never returns. If these words remind you of your power, leave a comment. I act now. Because the man who acts now doesn't wait for opportunity, he creates it. Procrastination makes a man lose time, but something even worse makes him lose himself. It's the voice that arrives after years of delay, after countless excuses and unfulfilled promises. It no longer says, "I'll do it later." It says, "This is just who I am." Those words sound like acceptance, but they are really surrender. They are the moment a man stops growing. "It's just who I am" is the phrase of resignation, the belief that your habits, your flaws, your weaknesses are carved in stone. But a Stoic would remind you, nothing about you is fixed, except your ability to change. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." This is not a call to perfection. It is a challenge to become conscious. Because the moment you say, "It's just who I am," you stop questioning your own potential. You stop evolving. And in the philosophy of Stoicism, stagnation is the same as death. Think about the power hidden in those few words. I can't change. When a man believes that, he doesn't just limit his actions, he limits his future. The Stoics saw life as a forge, and every challenge as the fire that shapes the soul. Character is not born, it is trained. Discipline is not given, it is built. Virtue is not inherited, it is earned. To say "it's just who I am" is to walk away from the forge while the metal is still soft. It's to abandon your own becoming. And yet, that phrase has a strange comfort to it. It allows you to stay the same without guilt. It tells you that your anger, your laziness, your fear are unchangeable parts of you. But the truth is, they are not you. They are simply parts of you that you have stopped challenging. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." You become what you repeatedly allow. If you feed weakness with excuses, it grows roots. But if you confront it with discipline, it fades. The Stoic doesn't ask, "Who am I?" He asks, "Who am I becoming?" That question alone keeps him alive inside. Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. He doesn't say, "This is just what the stone is." He picks up his tools and begins shaping it into something greater. You are the sculptor of your own mind. Every act of effort, every moment of restraint, every honest reflection, these are your tools. The moment you stop sculpting, the stone hardens. And if you call that hardness "who I am," you will never see who you could have been. The Stoic path is not about denying the self. It's about refining it. To say "I am what I am" is to ignore the fact that the self is always changing, every second, every choice. You are never finished, never fixed, never beyond growth. The man you were yesterday does not have to be the man you are today. Epictetus was right. First, decide who you will be. Then, act in alignment with that vision. Because who you are is not defined by what you've done. It's defined by what you continue to do. You are not a finished story. You are the writer, the editor, and the ink that never dries. So the next time the words "it's just who I am" rise in your mind, stop and ask, "Who told me that?" Because the man who repeats that phrase has chosen comfort over courage. But the man who rejects it, the one who says, "No, I am still becoming," that man is unbreakable. Growth is not a gift, it is a decision. And the moment you make it, you step back into the fire as the Stoics did, not to burn, but to be forged. You are not just who you are who you train yourself to become. There comes a moment in every man's journey when he looks back at the words he's spoken and realizes that each one was a choice, a brick either building or breaking the foundation of his character. The Stoics knew this. They believed that language shapes the soul, that every phrase carries within it a direction, toward strength or toward weakness. You've heard the 7 phrases that weaken a man. I can't. It's not my fault. That's unfair. I'm too tired. What's the point? I'll do it later. It's just who I am. 7 small sentences that seem harmless, but together they form the vocabulary of defeat. Each one teaches the mind to surrender, to seek comfort, to hand over responsibility to something else. And yet, each one can also be transformed, turned from a chain into a key. The Stoic path is not about never feeling weak. It's about never speaking from weakness. Because every weak phrase you remove is a chain broken. Every word you master is a step toward freedom. I can't becomes I will learn. It's not my fault becomes it is my responsibility to respond with wisdom. That's unfair becomes it simply is, and I will endure. I'm too tired becomes I will rise again. What's the point becomes the point is to live with virtue. I'll do it later becomes I act now, and it's just who I am becomes I am still becoming. This is the transformation that Stoicism offers. Not a change of circumstance, but a change of language, which becomes a change of mind. And finally, a change of life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Your words should be like actions, calm, measured, and true." That was not just advice for speech, but for living. To speak with clarity is to think with clarity. To think with clarity is to act with integrity. And when your words, thoughts, and actions align, you become unstoppable, not because life grows easier, but because you grow stronger. Seneca taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. So much of our pain comes not from the world itself, but from the stories we tell about it, the words we use to define it. When you learn to master your words, you begin to master your perception. The storm no longer feels like chaos, it becomes a test. The obstacle no longer feels unfair, it becomes an invitation to rise. Epictetus said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That single truth, when spoken often enough, begins to rewire the way you see the world. You realize that peace is not found in silence or success, but in self-control. And self-control begins with speech, Because every time you open your mouth, you reveal what commands you, emotion or reason, impulse or intention. The Stoic man speaks few words, but every one of them carries weight. He does not rush to react. He chooses to respond. He does not complain. He reflects. He does not make excuses. He learns. And through that discipline, his words begin to heal him. When you speak like this, calmly, intentionally, without surrender, your mind follows your voice. Your actions follow your thoughts. And slowly, the noise inside begins to quiet. You no longer waste your life explaining yourself to the world. You live it. So look again at your words, my friend. Which ones are chains? Which ones are keys? Because every time you open your mouth, you are either building your fortress or tearing it down. The Stoic path is not about silence. It's about strength in what is spoken. Words that reflect discipline, clarity, and purpose. Words that move from the mouth of a man who has faced himself and chosen mastery over chaos. If you're ready to rebuild your discipline, silence your weakness, and walk the true Stoic way, subscribe now. Your transformation begins here, because the Stoic way is not found in what you say once, but in what you repeat every day, in the language you choose, the thoughts you feed, and the man you continue to become.